beyond science.
What is it that stalks the streets?
They're here.
How do we know she is alive?
Lisa, sweetheart, there's a Jessie on the phone.
Did he say anything about the 5 students that are missing?
This is Kurt Rector from House of Death, and you're listening to The Hysteria Continues.
Yeah, welcome back to Hysteria Continues. And this week we are going to be concentrating on House of Death, aka Death Screams, the slasher movie from 1981 that's released in 1982. We'll come on to that shortly. My name's Justin from the Hysteria Lives, and joined again as ever by Joseph.
Mushi mushi, watashi wa Joseph desu.
Very impressive. And how's your Japanese, Erik?
I have to come up with new intros every time.
How's your Japanese, Erik?
My Japanese is poor, so I'll just say, it's Misha Erik, which is, I am Erik in Irish.
Fantastic. And Nathan, what are you going to wow us with?
Greetings, everyone, and that is British.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Well, we've been really pleased. We've actually had some feedback. We've been looking for some feedback, and we've actually started getting it. So thank you for all those who've been listening, both new listeners and old. And a shout out to a few people. There's a guy called Mick Huckle.
Mick Hucknall?
Mick Huckle, not Mick Hucknall, I don't think. I can't, if I'm reading my handwriting right. And he says, keep going with the podcast, chaps. They're getting funnier and more enlightening every time I listen. So it's the kind of feedback we like. There's also Curtis Dalton, who on the Hysteria Lives Facebook page has been adding really good old school adverts from slasher movies back in the 80s. And he says, I'm loving your podcast. Please keep them coming. And, of course, there's also Meep. Shout out to Meep from the Body Count Continues forums. He says he's not a fan of the House of Death, which is controversial, but he says he is a fan of the Hysteria Continues. So that's good stuff. Me. Sorry? Okay. And anyone else get any feedback? I think, Joseph, you've got some feedback from someone.
Yes, also want to give a shout out to Nigel and Body Boy. They seem to be pretty good ardent fans, so there's your shout out. I got one from a guy named Jonathan Knight. It says, I've listened to all 5 of your podcasts so far and love them. You guys keep me engaged each podcast, and I keep coming back for more because you keep it funny, fresh, and interesting. And he listed his top 3 guilty pleasure slashers talked about a few shows ago, and they are Don't Go in the Woods, Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, and Dr. Giggles. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Excellent.
All right, and if you want to send some feedback, we are really wanting more. You know, we're attention whores, I guess. That is the Hysteria Continues at gmail.com. Now, there are periods between each word, so that's the hysteria.continues at gmail.com, and you can contact us on the forums. We have Facebook pages, so send what you got.
Excellent.
Yeah, we call them full stops. I think,
yes.
don't we, Justin?
We do. It's yes. Pan-global grammar, sort of.
Yes.
So, well, before what we're going to do, we've got a really fun show lined up for everyone. We're going to, in a minute, we're going to come on to our favourite sort of audio clips, basically some scary, maybe, some fun, some cheesy clips of dialogue from some of our favourite slasher movies. And we're going to try and guess each one's to see if we can work out what they are. So that should be fun. But before we start that, it's been sort of customary to talk about some of the kind of slasher movies we've seen recently. Guys, what have you been watching? How about you, Joseph?
I saw Rubber, which was terrible. Actually, the problem with the movie is that it's very, very, very boring. Nothing happens except it basically rolls around a desert, and it'll come upon, like, let's say, a beer bottle, and it'll sit there for like 5 minutes, and then it'll finally decide to, I'm going to roll over it, and I'm going to crush it. And then, like, 5 minutes later, you'll have these people sitting out in the desert just staring off into the distance with binoculars, saying, the tire just crashed a bottle. He just crushed a bottle. And eventually the tire ends up killing a few people, but what it does is it shakes, and then someone's head explodes, and they keep using the same bit over and over to for their kill sequences. And the premise is really interesting, I think, but the problem is just nothing happens. It's an hour and like 22 minutes long, and it's just really boring. And it has the problem of talking down to the audience and sucking its own dick at the same time. It has an intro where this guy's like, okay, the movie you're about to see is one of the best movies you'll ever see about nothing. Things happen for no reason. And, blah, blah, blah. It's basically saying how fire killing people, and if you don't get it, you're stupid. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's a movie I was really, really, really thinking was going to be interesting because of its weird subject matter, but it turned out to be just boring and pretty forgettable.
It's a shame because it looked quite interesting. The trailer was fun as well. It looked kind of like a slasher movie with a tire, which kind of looked like it was pretty quirky. But it's a shame it doesn't live up to its potential.
No, not at all.
No. Okay. How about you guys, Nathan, Erik? Anything to report?
I saw, thanks to Erik and Joseph, actually, I watched The Victim, 1972, with Elizabeth Montgomery. And it was an interesting movie. It's about her sister is going through a divorce, and she calls Elizabeth, and Elizabeth decides to go out there and stay with her at her house in the country one stormy night. And when she gets there, her sister's gone. And, basically strange things starts happening around the house, weird noises coming from the basement. And I thought it was actually a really good, suspenseful movie, but I have to admit, the ending was very anticlimactic for me. I mean, after it went off, I was, saying, is that it? I mean, that's all there is to the ending. I won't spoil it, obviously, but,
the build-up is definitely better than the ending, I think.
Exactly. The build-up was worth, a bad ending, but, it's still a good movie. It's worth a watch, for sure.
Excellent. Is that a TV movie, did you say?
Maybe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's also known as is Out of Contention. It's known as.
Yes, that's the one we watched.
Yeah, that's actually the title of the one we watched.
Yeah, that was the UK release. Yeah.
Cool. Because there was I don't know if you guys have seen any of the Thriller, the Brian Clemens. TV movies, because a lot of those it just sounds like a bit like that with the American sort of usually get an American star. I think Linda Day George was in one of them actually, and A Women in Peril. One of the best ones is I'm the Girl He Wants to Kill, which has got a fantastic thing of a woman with massive Deirdre Bardo glasses running around an office block being chased by Psycho, which is very suspenseful, which is very good film.
Fantastic movie.
Yeah, that's a good film. How about you, Erik? Have you been watching it?
Okay, yeah, I've caught up with two 3D movies in 2D because I've rented them on DVD. One of them is Saw 7, which I finally caught up with. I've seen the first 6 in the cinemas. This one I skipped, but I rented it the other day. And, I mean, it's just more of the same, really, except it before with the Saw films, the traps and the setup were completely ridiculous, but the gore and the grue was quite realistic. But in this case, they've gone really over the top with everything. I felt like at times I was watching an early 80s Italian video nasty at times because there's just ridiculous amounts of intestines flying into people's faces and things. If you're a fan of the Saw series, it's just, as I said, it's more of the same. You're going to enjoy it. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised that I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I mean, it's nice and brief, and it's subtitled. Well, it's called Saw 3D in cinemas, Saw 7 in pre-production. It's called Saw: The Final Chapter on DVD. But I mean, I think it's far from the final chapter. I think we all learned our lesson with Friday the 13th. Yeah. It ends cryptically, and it ends very much in the same manner as all the other episodes in the series did. But as I said, half decent. I'd give it maybe a 6 out of 10. The other one I saw. The other one I saw was My Soul to Take. Now, I think this has divided people, or am I wrong? But I thought it was hideous.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It was.
It screamed studio interference all over it. It had no cohesive central sort of thrust to the storyline. I didn't know who to root for or what, and it had this weird hero character who's. The souls of his dead friends sort of possess him in the same way they do in Nightmare on Elm Street 4. And I can tell that the only reason this was post-converted into 3D for cinemas was because I imagine the distributor saw it and thought, oh my God, how on earth are we going to make our money back with this pile of crap? So they put, they threw 3D at it to try and sell it in the cinemas, although that failed as well. But I mean, I was watching it and I was like, there's nothing in this film that would make me want to... that makes it, viable to be in 3D. It's like, why? It's another Wes Craven turkey.
Right. Because is it one of the films that was put to 3D afterwards, wasn't it? It wasn't meant to be in 3D, and
it's a
kind
conversion.
Yeah, but as I said, I think the conversion was done as a way to try and save the film.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's just so meh. There was discussion on the forums about meh.
That's a good one to put in that one.
Yeah, that would fit perfectly into it. Didn't like it at all.
Okay,
it's a real turkey.
Cool.
Yes.
Well, I'd say a couple of films that I've seen. Well, one's a new film, one's a not so new film. One's it's Cold Prey 3, which is the third of the Norwegian slasher franchise, which I'm a big fan of them. If you haven't seen the Cold Prey films, they're really worth seeing, especially the second one, which is basically, without giving too much away, it's a story of a little boy who grows up to be a psycho in Norway in the snowy wastes, and he inhabits this hotel, a bit like The Shining, I kind of guess. In the first film, a load of snowboarders stumble across the hotel and get dispatched by him. And the second film picks up immediately after that, and it has the final girl from the first film being taken to hospital, but also the killer's dead body, or dead body in inverted commas, being taken to hospital. He comes back to life and essentially does Halloween 2, 1981, much better than Rob Zombie did Halloween 2 a couple of years ago. And the third one is actually a prequel, and it's set in 1988. So what you have is a group of horny, pot-smoking teens going out into the woods for sex and relaxation and drinking. And guess what happens? They run around in Smith's T-shirts, listening to massive, great Sony Walkmans, and get killed off one by one.
It sounds like Blood Tracks, is it?
It's not as cheesy as Blood Tracks. It's really suspenseful, actually. One of the things that I really like about the Cold Prey films is they are gory. They've got a bit of gore to them, but they don't go down the boring Saw torture porn route. They're actually they're really suspenseful. And this one's done. It's loads of really, really good suspenseful sequences in it. It's not quite as good as the second one, but it's definitely worth seeing when it comes out, or if it comes out. The other film I saw is an altogether much cheesier, or knowingly cheesy, film from the year 2000, which is Psycho Beach Party. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
I'm sorry, I love that movie.
It is great. I've seen it loads of times. It's basically a mixture of 50s monster movie, 60s beach party movie, and 70s slasher movie. And it's written by Charles Busch, who basically plays a policewoman in drag in the film, investigating murders amongst a bunch of surfers and beatniks on the Californian coastline in 1962. It's a really good fun film. It's very cheesy, but it's incredibly entertaining. It's definitely worth seeing. But you've seen it, Nathan.
Yeah, I love. It's got quotable dialogue. Me and my friend Melissa quote that movie all the time. Don't tell me how to handle my man's flippity floppity, baby. I grease up the cake pan, throw it in the oven, and lick the batter raw.
Yeah. So
I like that movie as well.
So you've seen it a few times. Yeah.
Yeah, I have.
I think it was underrated. I really enjoyed it. It came out and it had a lot of hype because it was like the first beach party slasher film, and then it just kind of fell by the wayside. And I don't think a lot of people gave it a chance. And it's really entertaining if you find a copy.
If you like Serial Mom, or it's kind of probably the closest to a John Waters slasher movie that isn't Serial Mom, and it's definitely worth catching. I mean, it's just a lot of good. It's a really good time, and maybe we'll come back to and talk a bit more about it at some point in the show. So, should we head on to our top threes, guys?
Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
Yeah, okay. Well, what we've done, as I said before, and actually just as a trailer is coming up, we're going to be talking about House of Death a little bit later, and Joseph's been playing stalker cross detective par excellence, and he's got interviews with 2 of the cast of House of Death. So we've got those coming up, so and they're well worth listening to. But before we get to that, what we're going to do is top 3, kind of talking about quotable dialogue. And each of us have chosen 3 bits of dialogue that we want to play for you. And we're all going to try and guess actually what they are. So what I'm going to do is without further ado, I shall start with the first one, and I think I'll go with Joseph's first. So this is Joseph's number 3.
Who's there? Stop it! You gonna get it, bitch.
Oh, lighten up, Demon. You'll feel a lot better after you shit.
I feel a lot better when I'm out of here. This shit box is gross.
Well, you better watch out for the snake that's gonna crawl up that crapper and bite your ass. Ooh, baby. Hey, baby. Hey, baby.
Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby.
Hey, baby. Hey, baby.
Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh. Nita? Hey, girl, what's up? Hi! Okay. I told you this isn't funny. Now you're gonna get it, bitch.
Joseph.
I know.
I like
one of my favorites.
If you listen to the very end, you can actually hear his zipper being pulled up.
You can.
But again, he didn't do the hygienic procedures, just like Harold in part 3.
There's something about the Friday the 13th movies where they dump and run, don't they? But I suppose if you're going to be being killed by Jason, then you're probably, the niceties of hygiene are probably last on your mind. But why did you enjoy that one, or why did you pick that as your number 3? It should have been your number 2, really, shouldn't it, Joseph? But
boom, boom,
boom, boom. Yeah.
Yeah, I make no apologies for this, but Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning, is my all-time favorite Friday the 13th film. It's entertaining through the whole thing, and I don't know, that scene, it's just so weird and so bizarre. You get this minute-long shit scene with Miguel Nunez just basically going, oh, and then they break into this R&B kind of, ooh, baby, and it's just so strange. I just had to include it. It's I don't know. It's great.
It's a strange idea of romance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't believe you didn't go with Billy and Lana, Joseph.
Oh no!
It's showtime.
Lana! Damn it!
Excellent.
Girl, you are so hot. That's what I say.
This way, Smarty.
That's what I say to the mirror every night.
Right, well, thank you, Joseph, for your number 3. Now, I'm going to go next only because it's the way I've got them lined up on soundboard. But funnily enough, this is my number 3.
Well, I'm Mrs. Voorhees, an old friend of the Christies.
Oh, thank you. That's so great.
No. I can't help you if you don't calm down.
But she's dead, and he's dead, and oh my God, poor Bill. Oh God.
All right. Come on, dear, then show me. No, but it's all right. I'll take care of you. I used to work for the Christies.
Oh God, what's going on here? Please help me get out of here.
It's just this place and the storm. That's why you're upset.
No, they're all dead. They're all dead.
All right, I'll go look.
No, please don't leave me. They'll kill you too.
I'm not afraid.
Yes, well, can you guess that?
Xanadu.
Well, that's a hard one. That's a very difficult one, Justin.
I've never seen that. It sounds pretty good, though.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it's obviously from the original Friday the 13th. Now, in case you're wondering why it kicked into the theme from Friday the 13th Part 3, then that's because I took my clips from a project I've been working on for many a year. It's something I told the guys about recently, and it's something I've talked about doing for years and years and years. It's basically a 60-minute mixtape of slasher movie dialogue and songs, which I dubbed Saturday Night Cleaver. And it's now pretty much ready, so that's why it's got the song from Friday the 13th Part 3 3D coming in at the end of that bit of dialogue. I do realise that they're not from the same movie, but that's why it was cut together like that. But I love the first film, and Mrs. Voorhees. She's just fantastic, and I've always said, like, I love her teeth like tombstones. She's the right mixture of cheese and teeth and horror and terror and everything, and chunking it where it just works. And not one of the criticisms, but some of the feedback I've had from some people of sort of saying, are we actually going to cover any of the bigger films like Friday the 13th? And I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I do want to cover some of the bigger films, and I think we will get round to doing it. But certainly when I set up Hysteria Lives, and I did cover the bigger films, but actually some of the joy was looking at the films that don't get any love, sometimes for very good reason. But that's why I think we started with some slightly smaller films or little less well-known films, but we will get around to some of the big guns soon. So without further ado, shall I move on to yours, Nathan? Your number 3?
Yeah.
Here he comes.
Sorry, Paul. Laugh. Damn it, you can't sing. I hope you die.
Okay, I don't know that one.
I'm not sure if I do.
Ooh. Have I stumped you?
Possibly.
Yeah.
It sounds familiar. It's not the Mutilator, is it?
No.
No.
But that was Buck Flower speaking. I hope you die. It's do you want to take it a guess, Eric, before I reveal it?
I'm trying to think of Buck Flower movies. All I can think of are John Carpenter ones, so I'm guessing it's not any of them. So I give in.
Is it Dana Kimmel?
It's from Cheerleader Camp.
I've never seen Cheerleader Camp.
Oh,
you're missing out.
Oh, you're missing out. It's great. I might have to pick it one time.
I will write it down on my little pad here.
One thing about that scene is it's just, I mean, really the dialogue is funny, but it's funnier if you actually see it, because the look on his face when he says that line is hilarious too, because he says it to this guy because the guy tripped and fell over him. And then he gets that over dramatic, I hope you die, just for falling on him. So, I mean, that's why I picked that one.
It's not as good as Buck Flower's Criminally Insane. My God.
Yeah, but you have to see that scene, though, to get the My God scene.
Well, you have to see both of them, I think.
Yeah, but at least I hope you die. It sounds funnier.
You're correct on this one.
Okay.
No, it sounds
on this one.
It's definitely. I agree. Eric should check the film out. I haven't seen it for years and years and years, but I have got it sat. I can see it on a shelf.
Oh, Eric, this movie is a fashion parade nightmare.
Oh,
so
my gosh.
You will enjoy it. You will enjoy it.
Ooh, definitely, yes.
It's a parade of bad fashions.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Well, coming on to Eric, I'm sure we may come on to some fashion talk. So
we will.
Here we go.
Jack, this is Lanier College. There's been a multiple shooting on the campus quadrangle. Sir, listen. Several students have been shot and kidnapped in a brown van. You've got to get out here. It's happening. The psychopaths are here.
Did you see that? It was horrible. They shot at us. It was murder, cold-blooded murder and kidnapping. I almost got killed and some other people were shot. How can you be laughing? Didn't you see what happened?
Yes, I saw it. But I also saw that the van had a Gamma fraternity sticker on the back window. Oh.
Radish.
Can we guess?
Final exam.
Yes, it was an easy one, wasn't it? That was from Final Exam. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, with a very slightly or very camp radish.
Yeah, I have. What was the word I've written down here? Campus Christmas radish. I have. Yes. That was him delivering the classic line, "The psychopaths are coming." Or the psychopaths are here, whatever he says. And then that pudding bowl girl who comes up and delivers her line of dialogue sort of without pause. I love her. She's like, how awful! Didn't you see what happened? Oh my god!
Classic. And there's some links, actually, isn't there, to House of Death with... am I right in thinking that House of Death was made by the same people, well, kind of the same place as Final Exam in North Carolina?
I believe Final Exam was shot in North Carolina, but I don't think it was the same people.
I think there might have been a couple of people were in it. There was a discussion we might get to later, but I did sort of see. I think it's Bleeding Skull did a commentary track for House of Death, which I watched, and they pointing out people in the film that were in Final Exam. But then they also said the killer was in Final Exam was in House of Death, which we've disproved. So I'm not entirely sure if they're right.
Definitely not true.
No. So. Okay, well, thank you, Erik. We've got more goodness coming up, and here's Joseph's number 2.
This boy's been dead for several hours. None of these wounds are fatal. It must have been a long and slow death. I'd say simply from loss of blood.
Oh my god.
Anyone want to guess?
Yeah, no, it's oh god, what is that film? It's the Nail Gun Massacre.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good.
Oh,
it's I love the music.
Have
you not seen it, Erik?
I have seen it, yeah, but I've only seen it once, so I didn't recall the dialogue.
It's that is a lot of fun, isn't it? It's a lot of.
Yes,
I mean,
this movie is just chock full of quotable lines, terrible music. It's one of the best bad movies ever made, and that whole dramatic pause must have been a long and slow death. I'd say simply from loss of blood.
Can I urge everyone to go check out your review of it on Hysteria Lives, Joseph? Because it's actually
I
really,
gave it
really
5
funny.
stars.
Yeah, I know, but the first half of the review, and then he pulled the rug from underneath everyone with the sort of second half of the review.
Oh yes.
I was fooled. I was completely fooled.
Were you? Okay.
I'm glad it fooled you. It really wasn't my intention. I mean, I was just joking, but if it fooled you, cool.
Well, I read. In fairness, I did read the review before I saw the film, so I was like, "Oh my god, if this film is this good, I must get it."
Oh, it's that good.
It is that good.
It is that good,
but for all the wrong reasons. And I'm sure it's a film we'll turn up time again on the podcast. So. Thank you for your number 2, Joseph. And I've got one, talking of stilted dialogue, I think Erik might enjoy this one.
Ooh. Guess it's calm, but it's certainly far away from everything. Well, what do you know? Right beside mine. Not bad, huh? Wouldn't if you're not superstitious about numbers. You mean number 13? No problem. That's not all. A girl in the very same bungalow was murdered brutally in her bed.
Honestly, how gruesome. That's a bit far-fetched.
No, I heard about it. It's a fact. The killer used a pair of scissors and just kept stabbing her.
I'll have nightmares if you go on telling all your horror stories. You've quite a repertoire of chilling tales.
I don't tell chilling tales.
Say, maybe we could talk a little about something else, like when everyone eats around here. I'm dying for a decent meal, not a nightmare.
I love it.
I thought you might like that.
That was like Bloody Moon.
It's Bloody Moon again,
Bloody Moon,
yes.
Yes, Bloody Moon.
I knew what it was. I was like, that's Bloody Moon again.
Endlessly quotable dialogue from the
I mean, I
Jesus
could have
Franco's
chosen
Bloody Moon.
anything from Bloody Moon. I didn't in the end because I included it last week, but it is, as you say, there's just so much to choose from in there.
There's something special about cheesy European films trying to be American films, and the dialogue being spoken by non-English speaking people, and it just has that fantastic, weird quality that sometimes doesn't. It sounds they don't know what they're saying. It's the intonation sometimes all over the place. And yes, what a wonderful, twisted, whacked out film Bloody Moon is, and from the it's like the genius crossed with cheese, Jesus Franco, who I must admit I don't actually have much time for the rest of his films, but Bloody Moon is a bloody good treat. So
that film is an ADR nightmare, I think. Dubbing, really bad dubbing. It's just it's hilarious. I love it.
It's fantastic. So yeah, that was my number 2.
Pick.
Thank you. And Nathan, here's your number 2.
At first, all they noticed was a strange, sickening smell.
Huh?
Awful. They knew, in the woods, before the night was over, painful cry. In the thick forest, a low moan. Sitting around the campfire, each one knew that before the night was over, someone would be torn apart by the blood-starved monster. Each night, they came searching. They knew before the night was over.
What's that? Huh?
One by one, campers were found with eyes, ears ripped out.
Oh, I think we've heard enough of that story.
Wait!
Huh?
Do you smell something? Strange.
God. Oh.
Awful.
Wonderful. It sounds like every person who's ever worked for John Waters all sat around campfire. Is it Don't Go Into the Woods?
That's it. It's the worst ghost story that I've ever heard.
It sounds like he's reading off. Yeah, it sounds like he's reading off the auto cue.
Do you smell something?
You have to be quiet to smell. That's the point there.
Fantastic.
And I like how he, at the end of a ghost story, the classic thing to do is to scream and scare everybody. Well, he does it in the middle of his ghost story.
Yeah.
Campers were found with eyes and ears ripped out. It's a horrible ghost story in a really bad movie, but just like Nail Gun Massacre, it's a very fun movie. And anybody that's listening that hasn't seen it, you should seek it out. It's hilarious.
It's entertaining.
Yes, very entertaining.
Yes, seek it out so you can destroy yet another copy. That's my opinion.
Just it.
Well, no, it's I am going back to some of these films and finding a new appreciation for them. But I think Don't Go Into the Woods, I can watch it in little bits, but it starts with that. It sounds like someone head-butting a synthesizer all the way through that first chase sequence, and it doesn't, and ends at the teddy bear's picnic. It's quite something. That's all I can say about it. So no, thank you, Nathan. And here we go, Erik. Here's your number 2.
Bravo. Practicing for tonight?
As a matter of fact, I was.
Practice makes perfect. Kim is always so perfect.
Nick likes me that way.
Really? You are keeping in mind that after tonight is all over, everything's going to be back to normal. I mean, Nick is king of the prom, and you just happen to be queen of the prom. But that's as far as it goes, Hammond.
You really ought to tell him that.
I'm telling you, okay?
You seem a little anxious, Wendy. By the way, who are you going with tonight?
It's not who you go with, honey. It's who takes you home.
Yes, one of my favourite. One of my favourite. Yes, to see if there's one thing I love as much as slasher movies, it's 80s high school movies, and I think that piece of dialogue captures it in a nutshell. You do know the film. You do know the film, don't you?
Yes.
Out of Africa.
Yes, it's Out of Africa. Meryl Streep and Robert Redford. Now that was Prom Night, of course, and it was Jamie Lee Curtis. And remind me of the actress who plays Wendy.
Was it Eddie Benton?
That's her. That's the one. Yeah. And I think when it comes to Prom Night, I think it works better. I think the first hour works good as a high school kind of movie. It falls apart a bit when it gets into its slasher area because it just can't really hold a candle to the better films of the era. But and Jamie Lee Curtis is in it. My lovely, lovely Jamie Lee. Yes.
Yes. Well, no, she's wonderful. Wonderful. It's a film that.
Hey,
not Horseface.
No, she's beautiful.
It's my.
Did you not see her Norks in Trading Places?
It's all the Activia she's eating.
All right.
Yes, we won't go there. Anyway, she's flush with success at the moment.
Yeah, I think she carries that movie in for me personally because, as I said, it's not one of the best examples of the slasher era.
Well, my holy grail at the moment with is the Prom Night TV version, which I've never seen, and I've been looking for it everywhere, basically. So anyone knows if anyone's got a copy, I'd love to see it. And it's got such thrilling bits that aren't in the film, such as Leslie Nielsen chopping wood with an axe. Also,
Shirtless?
Jamie Lee. Sorry, Shirley.
Shirtless?
Yes, well, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. And also Jamie Lee passing a note round class, and various other things, exciting things like that happening, which would be great if someone actually had the foresight to actually put Prom Night out on a proper, release. I'd love to see a Blu-ray of it because I'm sure it looked great. Just like Halloween 2, 1981 would look amazing on Blu-ray. And unfortunately, all we've got is crappy DVD releases, which don't do it justice at all. But yeah, so if anyone knows where the TV version of Prom Night is or has it, recorded it, that is my holy grail at the moment. So you'd make me very, very happy if someone get their hands on that.
Once again, that email address is... Just kidding.
Well, no, just send it this way if you know where it is. We will be eternally grateful. So, no.
But is it not wrong to send somebody videos and movies by illegal means?
It's very wrong, Erik. But
Baby Jesus frowns on you.
But I don't know if someone just copying it off an old recorded thing from when it was showing on cable back in 1982 is the same thing.
Oh, that's still wrong. I pray for your soul.
Okay, all right. Well, I will go to hell for Prom Night. So no, thank you, Erik. And now we're up to our number one. So here we go. This is Joseph's numero uno.
Why didn't you write me, TJ? Why didn't you call?
I wanted to believe me, but I couldn't. I mean, I really fell on my ass out there. I made so many mistakes, but I learned something. Look, give me a chance. If you still want me to go away, I will. But I have to tell you that I love you and I want you back.
How was I supposed to know that, Jesse? I honestly didn't think you were ever coming back. You just left me here.
Sarah, please. I'm sorry. I'm so damn sorry.
Is it Big Mama's house? I think we all know what that is. So, Joseph, why is that your number one?
That's for all the forum members. Paul Kelman and his lovely, lovely Canadian accent. I'm sorry. I'm so damn sorry. For Lunchmeat, apparently, because that's his shtick. So that's for you, Lunchmeat. No, it's one of those scenes that kind of breaks up the My Bloody Valentine, which is a pretty creepy movie, and it kind of descends into this soap opera moment where I love you, Sarah. I want you back. And it's kind of funny, so I chose it.
It's a great film, and it's kind of one of the few kind of melodramatic moments in it, isn't it?
Right,
it's
melodramatic.
Kind of, yeah. Excellent.
Actually, I was going to go with beware of what you make fun of, you little asshole. But I figured I would satiate the forum members with the I'm sorry, so that's why I picked it.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Joseph. And going on to my number one, it's one of my all-time bits of favourite dialogue from a relatively obscure film, but see if you can guess what this is.
Whoa, I almost hit that guy. He was carrying something. Did you see that? It's lucky I saw anything at all. Thanks for telling me, Nance.
There's something creepy about that guy. I got a look at his face. He was grinning even when it looked like you were going to hit him, Tom. I swear he had this strange look on his face. I thought I saw shoes sticking out from under that blanket.
Nah, he was just a big farmer with a bundle. Your mind's playing tricks on you, girl. You're all shook up. As soon as we find a good campsite, we'll smoke some of this good hash and loosen you up.
So guys, any guesses?
Woo. I'm stumped with this one as well. Nathan has me out for 3 on this one.
Well, this is my one.
Oh, sorry, Justin. I'm sorry.
Nathan, any idea?
I'm stumped. I'll guess body count.
Not body count. How about you, Joseph?
I honestly don't know either.
I must admit, it's one of my favourite bits of dialogue, and I especially like when it sounds like he's calling his friend Nance. But it's actually, maybe I'm not playing fair with this, but it is what I would term a kind of quasi-slasher movie. It's actually 1981's Midnight, which is the witchcraft sort of slasher kind of cross from John Russo with special effects by Tom Savini.
Yeah.
I was actually going to say Midnight. I swear.
It's got one of my favourite ever soundtracks. It's got the most amazingly cheesy theme tune, and I believe, I might be right or I might be wrong. It might be coming out on DVD soon somewhere. But it's a very borderline slasher movie. But I just love it's got that real Dana Kimmel-esque Nancy Drew type dialogue where they're being deadly serious, but it's got that beautiful cheesiness about it. So that's my one for posterity.
I like how they keep adding their names to the end of each sentence. It's like, you're right about that, Nance. Yeah. Oh, you're right about that, Tom.
I have to say, I love the artwork for that movie.
Yes,
fantastic. I had to say that. It's great artwork.
It's a fun film. It's a fun film. I've never seen it uncut. I think the UK release, which I've got, was cut quite significantly, and Tom Savini did some quite startling special effects for it, I believe. So I'm looking, if it is coming out on DVD uncut, then I shall be looking forward to that. So okay, well that was my number one, and Nathan, here's your number one.
Kenny, I'm sorry. I never told you. I'm so sorry.
You haven't changed.
I saw your picture in the yearbook. I never knew you liked magic.
I watched you tonight. You liked him.
No. Kenny, you're better than he is. I'm sure you're better than him.
I am. He didn't know how to cut a woman into pieces.
Yes.
I do know
prom
that
night
one,
again.
yes.
Sophie's Choice.
You got it.
Damn. Is it Terror Bus?
Terror Bus. Yeah, that's part 2.
Yeah. All right.
Frightening airplane.
Yeah.
No, that's from Terror Train.
Scary Bicycle.
Okay.
That's one of my favorite bits of dialogue of all time. I think that Jamie Lee Curtis obviously is awesome in that scene, but Derek McKinnon is Kenny. I mean, he has a great delivery in that scene. It's very creepy. So I had to pick it because I thought that was a scary scene.
I forgot actually how
haven't you met him?
In that.
Yeah, we did. He hit on Joseph, actually.
Oh.
My asshole is still puckered from that night.
But Derek's very flamboyant, isn't he?
Yes.
He's a very, very cool guy, though.
Yeah, he is. He was a very nice guy.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't...
He actually signed my picture, Kiss Me.
Did he?
Yes, he did.
Mine says, Joseph, thank you for last night.
Oh, really?
I'm serious. It's the lizard, and, why shouldn't he say last night? Because I saw his lizard.
It sounds like it gets a lot of action at these conventions.
I'm just a country boy. I'm not used to this kind of talk.
Right, yeah. But the thing that impressed me about going back to Kenny and Derek's performance in Terror Train was he wasn't a trained actor, was he? He was actually a drag performer, I believe, and which is why I think
still
he's
is.
picked.
I believe.
Is he still okay? But he's actually the performance. I forgot actually how creepy he sounded at the end there. He was, it's actually really imbues that with a sense of menace, doesn't he? Which is so Terror Train's another film love to see on Blu-ray, and a decent release of that with a Jamie Lee Curtis and Kenny, audio commentary would be fantastic. So no, thank you for Nathan for that. It's these are all. I hope people are enjoying these as much as we enjoy listening to them. But we're coming to our Erik's number one and the final. So here we go.
Right, now, whole plates to ourselves. Let's eat Melanie's ice cream. God, do you know what I've always wanted to do? I mean, like if time stopped for everyone except me. Try on Cindy's clothes. Yes!
Any guesses?
Sorority House Massacre?
Yeah,
that's the one.
Yeah.
I love that movie, so I could quote it too.
Now, can I ask you? When I reviewed this film for Hysteria Lives about 10 years ago, and I was working off the UK VHS back then. Now, for this clip, I was working off the US DVD. And this is the first time I'd watched it since I bought it a few years ago. And I'm convinced there's scenes missing for it, because the scene I wanted to use for the audio clip was one where Beth and her friend are talking about their hair, saying about how their hair is in a transitional phase, and how the great thing about hair is it always grows out. And it was nowhere to be seen on the DVD. So I had to settle for that 10 seconds of Let's Eat Melanie's Ice Cream, which is really good in itself. I just like the fact...
clothes.
Yeah, I like the fact that these really, I consider would be high-class or upper-class girls who wear expensive dresses that look like the lickable wallpaper from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory spend their spare time fantasizing about trying on someone's clothes.
I have to say that every time I think of Erik, I think of the scene in Sorority House Massacre where they're trying on the clothes. I've thought about that ever since I've met you.
Montage. Yeah. It's absolutely... Like, if you want fashion disasters, this is the first place you need to go, because it is... Some of the dresses are hideous. I mean, there's one girl who wears this sort of pink frock with these enormous shoulder pads, like an American footballer.
Have you got the old VHS, Erik? Can you?
I don't anymore. No, to make a comparison. But because in my review I referred to the scene where they're talking about their hair growing out, and it's not anywhere to be seen in the DVD. And I also remember a scene about them when they're setting up the TP in the back garden. They're talking about a recipe for chew bread or something. I remember that being quite inane, and that's nowhere to be seen in the DVD either. So I'm convinced that. We got a longer version over here than they did in the States or something.
Would you think
we got gypped over here?
Yeah. Do you think Criterion might put out a definitive version?
I think they might. It's exactly the type of film that they would do.
Right. Code Red, Code Blue, or whoever that is that
Code Red,
going out of business. They'll do it in like 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, what I'll do, Erik, is I'll see if I've got my VHS knocking about somewhere, because I've got it, and if I have, I shall see if I can find that clip for you.
Yes.
But
thank you.
But yeah, no, wonderful set of clips. I think I enjoyed that so much. I think we should do it again, because there's so many other fantastic bits of dialogue and bits from other movies. So keep them tuned, keep your ears tuned, because we'll come back to that, I'm sure, at some point.
Skimming the surface on that one.
Absolutely.
And in the meantime, keep eating Melanie's ice cream.
Exactly. Fantastic. Right, well, I think we've got to our feature presentation. This week it's a choice by Joseph, so we can blame him. So, Joseph... Hey. Okay, Joseph, take it away.
A razor-sharp machete, wielded by a madman, cuts through the night mist, leaving a dismembered bodies scattered about. The police are baffled by the sadistic killings and are helpless to stop them from happening again. What was once a small, quiet town is now engulfed in terror and shock. The blade is being sharpened again as a group of college students, unsuspecting of the brutal killings, are planning a party. The deranged killer is planning to have a party of his own. Join him if you dare. All right, that was taken from the Video Gems VHS release, and two things immediately spring to mind. First off, the police are not the police. It's just one lard-ass sheriff, so typical of these movies. And second, he's not really baffled by the killings, as he doesn't really even find out about them until the last 15 minutes. House of Death was a movie I first saw back in 1997. I rented it from a little shop called KC Video, and to be honest, I really disliked it. I thought it meandered about when there could have been more killings. I thought the characters were annoying, and I thought the plot was an incoherent mess. But something about the movie stuck with me, so I braved it again, and eventually again, and so on, until one day I did a complete 180. Admiring the characters, trying to piece together the loose plot, and getting excited over the zany, violence-filled finale that features everything from exploding heads. House of Death, I think, it's not a great movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it's imbued with a relaxed, playful attitude, and you can tell that everyone involved had fun. It was directed by David Nelson of Ozzie and Harriet fame, and filmed in Shelby, North Carolina at the infamous Earl Owensby Studios. For me, there are a few films that manage to stick with me throughout the years, and often they're films despised by others. House of Death is one of those films. Now, I have been in contact with two people from the film, Kurt Rector, who played Bob, and Hans Manship, who played Casey. And before we get to those interviews, I guess I'm going to turn it over to Erik. What did you think about the film?
I have kind of mixed feelings about the film, to be honest. I like the opening theme music, I have to say, because it's exceptionally over the top, and it makes me think I'm about to watch some Irwin Allen disaster movie.
Yeah,
and then like as soon as that stops, it moves straight in without stop to this cheesy elevator music, and I was thinking this is actually going to be really good. It's already won my heart over. I find it as you said, it does meander a bit. I found the plot kind of hard to follow at times because I think its main problem is it's trying to shove in too many characters all at once. I mean, you have your central core of Lily and maybe a few others like Bob and the sheriff and that, but the other ones I couldn't really tell who was who. And I mean, by the time the film finished, I had to actually email all you guys and say, can someone just tell me who the killer was again? Because I mean, part of the problem there was the print I'm watching is quite dark as well, so it was hard to tell what was going on a lot of the time. I think it does have a pretty spectacular final 10 minutes. I think it would have been better if they had paced it out in the more traditional slasher format, by which I mean maybe half an hour setup, maybe half an hour to 40 minutes of people being killed intermittently, and then 20 minutes of final girl or final boy or final both action. But as it is, it has a nice homegrown feel, I suppose. You were mentioning Don't Go in the Woods Alone earlier, and it kind of reminded me of that if it had better acting and better direction, if you know what I mean. It has that kind of sort of cheapy feel. I mean, there's only one really, really bad actress in it as far as I can remember, and that is there's this woman in the cafe about an hour into the film who's talking to the sheriff, and I don't know who she was sleeping with, but she had no right to be in that film. There's plenty of films worse than this. I mean, My Soul to Take is about 40 times worse than this film.
Thank you.
I mean, but it wouldn't be in my top 10 at all.
Okay. What about you, Justin? What do you think?
Well, yes. Well, what I'd like to do before I launch into my thoughts of this is I was looking on IMDb to see what other people thought about the film. And I found this very short glowing review. It says, if your day consisted of your dog being run over 3 times, getting fired from Wendy's, and your wife running off with the mailman or your brother, your day can still get worse by viewing this trash. Now, that is not, no, before I go in, that I don't agree with that at all. Actually, I quite enjoyed House of Death. It's a bizarre film. I loved the beginning, the start-up, and I thought it was actually it had a kind of weird resonance, actually, the beginning with a couple get murdered as the train goes past, and I thought that was a really good setup. Yep.
Not to interrupt you, but I gave you a clip from the beginning. Any way you can play that? Is
Zipper? Yeah, here we go.
Yes.
This is a clip.
Tell me you love me.
God, don't move.
Oh, please wait. Oh no, Ted, you promised.
Not that. The damn thing got caught in my zipper. Jeez, that hurts.
And, and pretty soon after that, they get garroted, don't they? And
are they having sex on a motorbike? Yeah,
they are, which isn't the most comfortable place to have it. But the weird thing is, the killer then throws them into the river in slow motion, and they float in slow motion while the credits go, and you've got this bombastic score. Which again, I really liked the score. I thought it was kind of really, funny. And then they float like romantically together down the river for days, it seems, with no one seeing in full daylight these two bodies floating down the river. But it's kind of weird, actually. I was watching it, and that happened. And like Erik, I thought, well, this could be really good. I had seen it, obviously I reviewed it for Hysteria Lives a number of years ago. And it goes to the fun fair, and it just stays there for half an hour. And it's just overage teenagers, some of them over 40, who are jumping around on bouncy castles, going on rides, eating pie, winning prizes, hiding from the fat butterball sheriff. And it's weird. It's almost like comfort food for me. I could sit and watch that forever. Or just be doing something in the background with that going on. It was just like 1981 personified in the sunshine, tight toweling shorts. everyone having a good time. I really, enjoyed that. But as a slasher movie, it just fails completely for half an hour. It just falls off the wagon, basically. Apart from the fantastic scene, which I'm sure you'll talk about, Joseph, where a woman who, for some reason, covers the coach's car in spray foam, and then is killed by being shot with an arrow, then running into a car park where no one else is, getting onto a merry-go-round where no one else is, even though it's next door to a fun fair, and then sitting on the merry-go-round, going round in the merry-go-round, and then being suffocated by the killer from the back. There's so many things wrong with that scene. There is a slightly perverse type of genius associated with how stupid that is.
Sorry, can I just interrupt you? She didn't cover his car in foam for no reason. That man had the nerve to talk to another woman.
No. She offered him a piece of pie, and he said it looks tasty. And when he walked away, he kind of did not eat her pie. So she was upset about that.
Oh, I thought it was because he was talking to another woman. I don't know. Women are complex.
I think she was jealous about that too.
Yeah,
it could have been a combination of both. But now, what I want to say about that scene where the girl gets shot with the arrow, that is the introduction to the ba 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 ba. That's like it's kind of like the Price is Right music. I keep expecting Roddy to go, "Come on down," but it never happens.
It's the most bizarre getaway vehicle in slasher history, maybe, isn't it? Sitting on a merry-go-round. It's kind of...
Where are you going to go?
Where are you going to go? Exactly, just round and round and round. So it's kind of the most bizarre thing. And why that was sat outside the fun fair, it boggles the mind. But then, having said that, with House of Death, you probably aren't looking for believability. I don't think this is
realism.
Yeah. Realism. This is not a realistic slasher movie by any stretch. But then, I mean, I'll get off my soapbox in a second. But just to say that I love the last 10 minutes with all my heart. I think they are fantastic. It's a shame that the print is so crappy and you can't really see what's going on for a lot of it. But those last 10 minutes are what early 80s slasher movies are all about, cramming all the deaths into 10 minutes, which they shouldn't have done. I agree with Erik, they should have stretched it out. But it's just like, I just love that kind of slightly tongue-in-cheeky kind of cat and mouse, everyone running around with their hands in the air, screaming with their polyester causing sparks to fly off their crotches as they run around the house looking, boss-eyed and don't know which way to run. And the killer's just stabbing the machete through the door and up the stairs and into every orifice. I mean, that is what early 80s slasher movies are all about to me. They're fun, they're Jack in the Box, cat and mouse, and if the rest of the film had been like that, this would be a small classic. But we'll talk more about it, but I certainly didn't hate it. It's not my top 10 like Erik, but it's it's a fun film.
All right, what about you, Nathan?
Well, it's not in my top 10 either, but I still love it. I think it's a really good, fun movie, and we've said before, I love that music. I think that's some of my favorite music in any slasher film. One thing I really like about House of Death is I really got into the characters. I kind of like the man-hating grandma who Joseph always cracks me up because he always says he wants to wheel her into the river because she hates men. That one scene.
There's a scene.
Yeah, where they're at the fair and they roll up to Kathy. And they're talking to her, and the grandma's all sweet and pleasant. And then Bob, who's been down below, sticks his head up and looks up, and the grandma's demeanor completely changes. Then she's like, "Oh God, a man's around here." Mm-hmm. And also love Ramona. And I think the only complaint I really have about this movie is I think Ramona should have been the heroine. I mean, yeah, she was the slutty character, but there was a lot more to her character than just being a slut. I mean, you actually get a lot of insight into her character after she and the sheriff have their big argument outside of the coach's house. I thought you actually learned a lot about her and how, she's not just a slut. She actually has a lot of issues resulting from a car wreck.
The thing about that is that she was in the car with Casey, and I think that's what caused his brain damage because there's a sore spot with the sheriff, and he's like, "Don't you talk about fun." And she's like, Casey was driving the car, not me.
Yeah, so I think that shows, that maybe they both have some anger or guilt issues about that car crash. And, they pretty much, I guess, take it out on each other.
Yeah, they were certainly more interesting than Susan Kyger, I think. Anyway.
Yeah, that's my problem is, I mean, Susan Kyger's character, the heroine, she was boring. I mean, there wasn't much going on with her. She was just a sweet, blonde, innocent, and that's it. Her grandma was more interesting than she was, and I wanted to kill her grandma.
I thought Susan Kyger was the bit I thought she shone in was when she told the story about the serial killer. Shall I just play that little clip, Eric?
Yep, go ahead.
Joseph. This is Susan Kyger.
She threw open the shower door, and hanging from the nozzle was her dog. Its throat had been slit, and blood dripped in large red droplets onto the clean white tile.
I mean, she's not going to win an Oscar for that. She's no Meryl Streep, but I really liked that kind of campfire, like typical early 80s slasher movie, campfire sitting around telling ghost stories. In this case, it's an urban legend, which I don't know was it the first time that urban legend had been talked about? Because I know it's been used in
certainly the
movies
first I remember.
Yeah, that was the first time I ever heard that story altogether. So I used to go around telling that like it was my own when I was a kid, and then people finally found out I was a fake, but whatever.
They're still finding out today.
But that's if listeners don't know. I mean, it's the old urban legend of a woman being home alone, and she puts her hand under a bed, and a dog licks her hand, and it kind of reassures her. But in fact, it's actually a serial killer under the bed licking her hands. And it was used in another slasher film from the last 10 years. And I can't remember it now. Can you remember what film used that?
It's Urban Legends Final Cut. They actually...
Oh, was it? Yeah. Okay.
Well, and they did the story in that anthology. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it was the anthology one I was thinking of. Which one was that?
Campfire Tales.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's what
So it was in two of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So House of Death was being ripped off, even though it's obviously patently a Friday 13th rip-off, and that's what they were going for. But they were going, I mean, obviously with the gory killings, because quite a lot of slasher movies from after 1980 into 81, certainly by 82, they actually kind of lost a lot of the gore, but they were doing some quite impressive cheapo gore effects in this, I thought, and especially those slam bam dismember me man final 10 minutes I thought were really really good, and I think I don't know if you think the Quentin Tarantino what's that can't remember the Grindhouse, Death Proof, and when Eli Roth did the Homecoming slasher movie parody
Thanksgiving,
yeah. Then with the whole head falling off, I think that may have been borrowed from this movie with the boyfriend's head falling off, which I thought again was it's just it's a good time. But I mean, there's quite a lot more to say about this movie, Joseph. But did you want to take a break for one of our guest interviews?
Yes, the first one we're going to play is with Kurt Rector. Obviously, he played Bob. You just want to go ahead and play that?
Yeah. Okay. Well, here we go.
All right, we're here with Kurt Rector from House of Death. He played Bob, and he's going to answer a few questions today. So thanks for being here, Kurt.
Sure, happy to help.
All right, can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with House of Death?
Sure. The film was shot in 1981, I believe, and it was produced at a place in North Carolina, a little town outside of Charlotte called Shelby, at a place called EO Studios. And EO Studios was a privately owned film production facility. A man named Earl Owensby, just a rich guy who liked movies and wanted to be a movie star and wanted to make his own movies. So he built this pretty little place where he made his own movies. And I had previously done one other film with them. And the guy who did most of their directing was a guy named Worth Keeter. And Worth and I got to be good friends, and we continue to stay in touch to this day. And when Death Screams came up, which Death Screams was the shooting title of the film, they were kind of scratching around, I guess, looking for people. And EO Studios said, why don't you look at this Rector guy? I can't remember whether I auditioned for them or not. I don't think I did. I had done a bunch of work for EO Studios on the previous film, reading against other actors who were auditioning. And I think they just finally looked at some of those, and they called me and said, hey, would you like to be in this movie? We'd like you to play this part. And I said, absolutely, because I was acting professionally in those days, and anytime anybody was willing to give me money to act with my clothes on, I was happy to be there.
Awesome. I think the movie you did with Worth Keeter, wasn't that The Dogs of Hell, or do you remember the title?
Yeah, that was actually, the original working title of that film was Rottweiler. The interesting thing about Dogs of Hell / Rottweiler was that it was one of the first films shot with the Condon 3D lenses, which is similar to the process they use now for digital stuff, because the way the Condon lenses worked was there were two polarized filters that went over the lensing, and they were 90 degrees out of, they were at parallax. So when you looked at them with the correct glasses on, then your left eye couldn't see what the right eye was seeing, and vice versa. And not to be too technical, but that's how 3D works. So that was a real interesting shoot to be on. The first film that Worth and I worked together on was a film called Dare to Be Great, that was a biopic about a millionaire imbecile here in Florida who was well known at the time and isn't now. I'll just put it that way. At the time he was well known. Now he's not. My father was the executive producer of the film. He put up all the money, and he didn't have anybody who knew anything about production work. And at the time, I was acting professionally and was interested in film. And he came to me and said, "Look, I need you to go up and go to work for me, and make sure these guys know what they're doing, and make sure that we're getting what we want." So that was actually how Worth and I got to be friends, because Worth was directing that film, Dare to Be Great, and I was coordinator for the executive producer, which would normally have been a thing that kind of put us at odds, because, I'm there to say this is not good enough or this is good enough, and, you can see how that would create some abrasion, but Worth and I hit it off immediately. But other than that, we get along like two peas in a pod, and we had a great time working together and continued to work together for the next 4 or 5 years until I kind of stopped acting.
Awesome. Back to House of Death. The movie kind of bounces between characters.
Yeah.
Like they make you think that you and the Kathy character, Andrea Savio, or however you pronounce that.
I think it was Savio.
Savio, okay. They kind of make you think that you're going to be like the hero heroine of the film, and then they kind of just switch gears into like Susan Kyger's character, Lily. And can you tell us, was it always supposed to be like that, or were there script changes?
I think it was always supposed to be that way. I have to tell you that at the time, my impression, and this is just my impression, was that the producer was using this as a vehicle to get into the pants of the girls on the shoot as he could. And why he didn't just go out and hire a hooker is beyond me, but that certainly seemed to be the case. I mean, I remember that the guy was just a total horn dog, and he was just, the girls in the film would be in the studio walking back and forth, and he'd just all but be following them around with his tongue out. Not that they weren't beautiful. They were all gorgeous, but it was just the kind of thing where you're like, dude, get a little bit of control or something.
It has sort of a sleazy feel to it now.
It did. I mean, the whole time that we were working on it, we all kept saying, are we going to come in tomorrow and everybody's going to have to take their clothes off? I mean, that's how it felt. That never happened. I mean, there was never any, nobody ever suggested that, hey, how would you feel if maybe we took this in a different direction? I think that the film was always planned to be a vehicle for Susan Kyger. Susan was the big star from L.A.
She was a Playboy, right?
Say what?
She was a Playboy model, if I recall.
Yeah, exactly. And she was, the word we got on her was that her nickname in L.A. was the Blonde Death, because apparently she'd worked with various producers who as soon as she worked with them and finished whatever they were doing, then, their careers just fell off the map and they never worked again.
Wow.
I don't know that that's true, but that was the background we got on her, and she didn't seem like an unpleasant person. She certainly didn't seem like she had any time for any of us, particularly. But it was a very strange film to work on because we had this kind of we had Susan, who was from L.A., and we had David Nelson, who, from Ozzie and Harriet fame. I mean, I don't know how many of your listeners will actually know who the hell David Nelson is, or for that matter, who Ozzie and Harriet are.
Everyone.
But, yeah, and then we had a local crew out of North Carolina who all were experienced, but they're local experienced, and, local actors, and, so it was this kind of hodgepodge of people whose experiences were not necessarily, didn't really make us a very cohesive group. So we kind of struggled a little bit there for a while. But the script was always supposed to be about Susan. I just think the truth was that her character was just never that interesting. You kind of went, who is this person? She's a waitress. Tell me something about her that makes me care. My memory is that she was supposed to have been, the local girl who did great in high school but didn't have the money to go to college, and who cares? That's sad, but it's not like that's, a driving force for a film.
I definitely agree with you there. I think, for my money, the more interesting character in the film for me was the Ramona, played by Jennifer Chase.
Yeah.
She played the slutty character.
Yeah,
I thought she had more personality than...
Yeah, well, and she was a better actress than Susan.
I agree.
And when Jennifer came in and we started working, Jennifer's attitude was, I'm just here to have fun. She had done a couple of photo shoots, and I think she'd done some industrial stuff, and she was just there to have a good time. So she was easy to work with. Every scene I had with her was just bing, bing, bing. They were trying constantly to set up these red herrings so you wouldn't see through to the bald truth that, the coach was the bad guy, and the bottom line was, his whole relationship with Susan revolved around his overwhelming desire to kill her for no particular reason. And, I have to say, I don't know that I ever saw a full script. One of the things that mitigated in my favor as an actor for film was always that I'm a pretty quick study. You can hand me, the sides for a scene that's going to happen in 10 minutes, and I can pretty much, nail the dialogue for that 10 minutes. An hour later, I won't remember it, but for in the next 10 minutes, I'll be able to do that. So a lot of times they would just give me sides while I was sitting in the makeup chair and say, this is what we're doing, and I'd go, yeah, all right, fine. I always sort of felt like, tell me what you want me to know and get out of my way. I just, I just wanted, as Spencer Tracy, the great actor Spencer Tracy, once said to David Niven when David Niven asked him for some guidance on being a great film actor, Tracy said, hit your marks and say your lines and look like you're listening when other people are talking. And that's what film acting is about. Know how to hit your marks, say your lines when it's your turn, and the rest of the time pay attention to what other people are saying, and you pretty much got it knocked. And as a result, I didn't really pay that much attention to what the rest of the script was about. I mean, I knew the overview at the time, but I think they always intended that it would be Susan's movie. But what was happening as the producer would realize, well, he's not going to get in Susan's pants this weekend, he would shift his focus to Jennifer, and he would be saying, well, I want to enhance your importance. And so he would write stuff for her, and add scenes or subtract scenes. I'm not really sure what all he was doing. I just know that the one group of people for whom he was not doing that was the guys. Because basically, the girls had a makeup trailer. We stood around, and the makeup person would come up and hit you with a big powder puff, and off you'd go. Bill Gribble, who played the oldest of the college students.
Walker? I think it's Walker.
Yeah, I think so. It's worth noting here that the only person who was remotely close to the age she was playing was Andrea. At the time, I was playing a senior, I think my character was supposed to have just graduated from high school. Mm-hmm. And so I was, my character was in that interim between just graduating from high school, going to college next year. I was 26 at the time.
Wow.
Bill Gribble is playing a senior in college, and he was 42.
Whoa.
So I mean, they're having to color his hair and all kinds of stuff, and we're all going, who the hell's going to believe this bullshit? None of us look remotely the age we're supposed to be. The producer was much more interested in the ladies than he was in any of us guys. Bill was a bit higher in the pecking order, and he seemed to have a little bit more knowledge about what was going on. And so, he would come to us and go, well, this is what's happening, guys. And we'd all go, we don't give a shit. It doesn't matter to us because we just want our money. As long as the paycheck is coming, this movie could go on for years and we'll be fine with it. So, we just really felt like as long as we know what we're supposed to do, we're going to do it. I think they did some rewrites. I mean, that's pretty common in most films that you do some rewrites. But I think a lot of the rewrites were driven by the fact that it wasn't a terribly interesting story to begin with until you got into the slashing parts. For instance, Jennifer's death scene, I don't think was originally intended to. I don't think it was originally supposed to be quite as striking as it was. But Warwick Keeter, who was not directing but was doing special effects for the film. Worth is an interesting guy, and he was very young at the time and had a huge skill set for film. And he could shoot, he could direct, he could light, and he could do special effects. And he did a body cast from the head down to her waist. And actually, I guess down to her hips, with her hands over her head, and he did a life mask of her, and that's actually there was a scene that we shot at. Whether or not it made it into the movie, I don't know. But because Worth was able to do this body cast of her, he made this thing so that and then we just crammed just all kinds of foul chicken guts and stuff up into the body cavity of this thing, so when I pulled her out of there, it just all went and came running out. I know that they rewrote some scenes as time went by, just based on what they had the ability to do, that they hadn't expected to be able to do. There was one scene that was, I don't think it was originally intended to. In fact, I know it was not originally intended to be this way, but as time went by, the producer and David Nelson said, "Hey, let's see what we can do about this." So what they wanted to have happen was the way the death scene, I think, shows in the film is that the coach falls through the shed, falls out the window of the old deserted shack where we all wind up, and then that fat ass sheriff is sneaking up on him with his gun drawn. And Nils sits up out of the rubble, and the sheriff shoots him in the head and kills him. Well, earlier in the film, one of the other male actors, whose name eludes me, but he was pretty much an also-ran, is beheaded, and they find his head sitting on top of a tombstone or something. But it was such a quick scene, it was the feeling that no one would recognize that it wasn't actually Nils. So once again, Worth gets out, his fake blood and all the chicken guts he can buy for $5, and crams them up into the head of this thing, and then puts a seal on the bottom of it to hold it in place, and puts a wig on it, and puts the stocking cap on it that Nils was wearing, and we set this thing up, in the middle of this pile of rubble in one of the studios that hadn't been completed yet. Built a big stop behind it so that if it was a through and through, which it was going to be, the bullet would stop back there. And then Worth, who was a pretty good shot, gets out this huge 44 Magnum that they'd used in several other films, and Worth fires a shot and hits this thing right square between the eyes. In short, when you see it in the film, you look at it and you go, wow, that was pretty impressive, because, 1 second there's a head there, the next second there's just, mess and what appears to be brains and all kinds of stuff. But in the original footage, which is all, at this super high speed, so when you run it through a regular film projector, it's very slow motion. What you see is this, as the bullet hits this face, the whole face just kind of caves in, and, it's sort of, it looked like a big belly button, just kind of rolled in on itself. And then the wig flies right straight up in the air. All the brains come out the top. And then the brains come back down and land right where they came from, and the wig and the stocking cap come down and land right back on the head again. We were laughing so hard, nobody could believe it. Everybody's just going, "That's just amazing!" That's just outrageous. So, they rewrote things as they went along, based on trying to say, what can we do? What's available to us that they hadn't known before? I think when the producer got there and he saw what they were capable of there at that studio, that he hadn't expected them to be capable of, he kind of expanded his vision, as it were, and we added some things that would not ordinarily have been there, or at least were not in the original script.
Right. Do you keep in touch with anyone these days from the film?
I don't keep in touch with any of the actors. I kept in touch with John Kohler, who was one of the guys on the film. He was an actor.
Diddle? He was the prankster.
Yeah. I kept in touch with him for a while, but we kind of lost track of each other. As I say, I'm still in touch with Worth on a regular basis. Interestingly enough, Worth has had a pretty stellar career since then. He eventually went to Los Angeles, and I got a call from Worth one night. He said, "I got to tell you something." I said, "What's that?" And he said, "I was working on a project." He said, I got hired by these guys. It's a kids show." And I said, "Yeah?" And he said, "It's television." And he said, "I went out to shoot in the streets of L.A." And he said, "When you're shooting in L.A., the only people who give a damn are the bums on the street, who will occasionally walk up and, offer their insight as to where the camera placement should be. But for the most part, people just ignore you." And he said, I called for talent to come out of their trailers, and he said, it was like a Who concert. And he said, "I just don't get it." And I said, "Worth, can I ask you a question?" And he said, "What's that?" And I said, "Is the name of the show Mighty Morphin Power Rangers?" And he said, "Yeah, how'd you know that?" And I said, "You're the only guy I know who could go to work on the most popular show on television and not know that you were working on the most popular show on television." He worked for Saban Entertainment for a long time, did a lot of Power Rangers, did a lot of Big Bad Beetleborgs, and he also worked on Silk Stockings and a bunch of other stuff. Did several films, had a really good career. Enjoyed his time out there, and he's he's moved back to North Carolina now, as far as I know, and is kind of taking projects there.
Awesome.
The other people that I keep in touch with are Talmadge Peace, who was one of the grips and the electrician on that film. I still have Facebook contact with, and a couple other people from the crew, but not so much the cast. We all kind of went our separate ways, and other than Kohler and I don't know that any of them stayed in touch with anybody.
Right. All right. How about some of the juicier stuff, like behind the scenes anecdotes or anything like that? You
Absolutely.
Might want to.
Well, when you and I talked the first time about this, I think I told you the story about John Kohler and
the fake blood.
The scene where we find him in the outhouse.
Mm-hmm.
The night that we did that, it was cold and it was foggy and it was damp and it was really a pretty miserable night. And of course, we're all working in shirt sleeves, so we bundle up, wait for the scene, strip down to our t-shirts or whatever we're wearing, do the scene, and then bundle back up again. So Kohler's scene is he's supposed to be found, he runs off to the outhouse, and then later we said, where is he? And we go over to the outhouse, and somewhere in there is a raccoon that was supposed to be a red herring and, provide the woo, everybody jumps one time, before we finally whip open the outhouse door and find John hanging upside down by his feet from a hook, and he's been eviscerated, and he's covered in blood, and he's hanging there dead. So it was just a huge pain in the ass to get this thing done because, it really was an outhouse. I mean, it really was an old shack. I don't think it was really an outhouse, but it was an old shack, so they had to reinforce the roof and all kinds of crap to be able to have it be strong enough for him to hang there. And they really did it exactly the way it looks in the movie. I mean, they just strapped his feet together and hung him from this hook. And Worth had his own proprietary blend that he used to make fake blood. But I do remember that a main component of it was Caro syrup, which is pretty sticky. And so they get Kohler in there, and they get him all coated in the blood, and they do a take, and something is wrong, and we do another take, and something is wrong. So they coat him again, and something is still wrong. So we go through this like 4 or 5 times, and then somewhere along there, everybody sort of got distracted, and then catering came by and said, lunch is ready, and everybody went, oh, well, let's go eat. So everybody takes off to go eat, and, we're about 20 minutes into lunch, and somebody looks around and goes, where the hell is Kohler? Like, holy shit, we left him hanging in the outhouse. So we all go dashing back over there, and I went along even though I was just an actor because John was a buddy, and I'm like, holy crap. So we all go running over there. We throw open the door, and here's, as we're approaching the door, we can hear Kohler in there going, hey, is anybody out there? Somebody help me. I'm just hanging here. So when we get the door open, by now the syrup has dried. It's run up into his nose. It's glued his eyes shut. His hair is just matted in this crap. His clothes are stuck to him. He's just, he can barely put his arms down. It's all stuck in the hair on his chest, and, it's just miserable. And he's got to get through the rest of the night. So his feet are numb. He can't walk. We get him down and unstrap him. We get his eyes pried open. God bless him. He was brave enough to say, when the director said, listen, we really need to do this scene, are you okay if we strap you up again? John was reluctant, but he agreed to do that.
Just don't forget about me this time.
Yeah, he said, just don't forget about me this time. We said, all right, we won't. So they strapped him up, and the crew was so impressed they nicknamed him John Kohler Stunt Jew. And John was so taken with that name, he was so proud of that he actually had business cards made up that said John Kohler Stunt Jew. And he passed them out to people, and it was just one of the things that made John great was that he was very much like the character that he played. And he was very funny. He was very much a prankster. He was had a really oddball sense of humor. And later on, when he and I worked together in Rottweiler, in Dogs of Hell, we continued to just have an absolutely great time. He was really a person who kind of pulled the crew together, or pulled the cast together, because everybody liked him and everybody enjoyed being around him. A couple of the girls didn't care for him because he was prone to rather loosey goosey humor. Yeah, and farts. He was into farts. He was a big guy on fart humor. The other thing that I would tell you that just for me personally was uncomfortable was that during the entirety of the filming, I'm off and on involved in these rather torrid little love scenes between Andrea and I. And as I said, at the time I was 26 years old. Well, the only person who was close to her appropriate age was Andrea, who really was 17. She had just graduated from high school. And I've got all of these, passionate moments with her, and I'm thinking, never mind that this is the South. I'm keeping a weather eye out all the time because I'm figuring the cops are just around the corner and they're going to come in and bust me for, molesting a child. But we got along great with the cops. Everything was fine, and it was never really an issue. It was an odd film. I mean, we had this little group of fun people, that were pretty much from Jennifer Chase, down through John, and the guy that was Jennifer's love interest, and Andrea and me, and Bill Gribble to some extent, and then we had Susan Kyger, and her little cadre of people, and it was sort of like we never interacted except when we were on set, because the rest of the time we just didn't have anything to do. She didn't want anything to do with us, really. We weren't anybody important and couldn't do anything to further her career, and she just wasn't really that interested. Which was fine, because none of us were really that interested either. We were like, well, we can't do anything to further your career anyhow, so,
Right, exactly.
Yeah, go ahead. Bill Gribble, the last I heard of Bill Gribble, by the way, was that he was living in, this was as of 2010, he was living outside of L.A., and that's really about all I know about those guys.
Wow. All right. I guess before we end this, I just want to say it's been a real pleasure talking to you. And
hey, it's been great.
I know my fellow podcasters will really appreciate everything you've had to say about the film.
Sure.
Anything you'd like to kind of plug? Maybe what you're doing these days or anything like that?
These days, what I do, as my time with EO Studios progressed and I worked with them more, I eventually did a film. Well, I did the 3D film Rottweiler with them. And because they were shorthanded for crew, nobody had really anticipated how much light the 3D lenses were going to suck up. And I eventually became a technician rather than an actor, pursuing dream of directing, which I have done some of, not for film, but for industrials and things like that. And these days I do technical work for conferences and conventions. A lot of production work. In fact, I just returned from Phoenix, and I'll be leaving for Raleigh-Durham in a day or two. So, other than saying to any of the young people out there who are interested in working in production but don't necessarily want to fight the good fight to try and get into films forever and a day, consider conferences and convention work, because we're all old guys in it these days, and there aren't that many young people out there who want to do what we do. And it's a great way to make a living.
Wow, that sounds pretty cool, actually.
It is. It's a lot of fun. I travel a lot. I work with extremely high-end equipment.
Wow, excellent. All right, well, it really has been a pleasure, and once again, I thank you for doing this. Not a lot of people have responded about the film. Actually, just you and Hans Manship, who played Casey.
Yeah.
Everyone else either ignored me or gave me the auspicious, no, I didn't do anything with that movie, even though you can obviously tell it was them from their photographs.
Right.
But
I'm sure some of them are probably a little bit embarrassed about it.
Exactly. I mean, I wouldn't be.
No, I don't see any reason to be embarrassed. I mean, it wasn't the greatest film in the world, but if only the greatest films were ever made, we'd see about one movie a year. And my memory of this movie was that it was entertaining, if you like that sort of thing. And it paid my bills.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And kept me busy, and was a great learning experience, because it was, I think, my second film that I worked on, and I learned a lot about acting, and I learned a lot about film production, and I learned a lot about pretty much every aspect of the business.
Once this is, we're recording for House of Death this Sunday on April 3rd, and we're going to integrate it into the podcast. So once that's online, I can send you a link if you'd like to listen.
I'd love to.
All right.
I'd love to.
All right, Kurt. I really appreciate it, and thanks again.
Well, that was great. Thanks, Joseph, for doing that. We've got another interview coming up shortly with Hans Manship, which should be great. So, Joseph, what else do you want to tell us about House of Death?
I think I've pretty much covered it all. I did both of these interviews, and I got a lot of information, and they relay a lot of information. And I don't know, House of Death kind of gets a lot of flack, and I think it's a little unfair. Now, the middle portion, it is a little slow, but I come to love the characters so much that it doesn't bother me anymore. I mean, I can watch those carnival scenes and I get a kick out of them. And I mean, that's pretty much the gist.
Can I just add that in your interview with Kurt there, you mentioned that of course everyone knows who Ozzy and Harriet are.
Yeah,
I have no idea who Ozzy and Harriet are.
Well, I said everyone.
You don't know who they are, Justin.
No, I had no idea who were they.
I've no idea. Yeah,
it's not
Seriously,
like the Brady
you don't know
Bunch.
who they are?
The Brady Bunch came over here and Partridge Family, but not Ozzy and Harriet. I've no idea who they were. No, are they?
Wow.
What were they? Is it like a sitcom?
Sort of like a Leave It to Beaver type show from the 60s, or sort of like Brady Bunch, maybe one of those wholesome.
We didn't get Leave It to Beaver either.
No. I am aware of Leave It to Beaver though, but
it's a wholesome family values 60s, 50s sitcom that were so prevalent back in the day.
So it's kind of a bit weird to have somebody from it. What was he? Did he play the son or something in it, or was he?
Sorry?
Was he Ozzy or Harriet, or who was he? And
I really don't
Harriet.
Was he Harriet? Okay.
He was Harriet.
He was
really
the
don't
son.
remember.
He was the son of Ozzy and Harriet, I think.
Yeah.
Whoever, because they were a couple, weren't they?
I believe
In real life, yeah.
I never actually watched the show. I mean, I might have watched it once or twice when I was a child, but
What was it on in the 50s, 60s?
yeah, I was a child in the 50s.
No, but I mean it's a
Yeah,
rerun.
I thought so, yeah.
It was the 50s or 60s. I'm not too sure. I believe
Okay.
it was the late 50s, early 60s. But yeah, it's kind of weird, him going from this TV wholesome thing and directing this shoddy, gore-filled slasher film, which it's kind of interesting, actually.
Yeah, no, I think it's kind of interesting. Are we going to? I mean, every week we spoil who the killer is.
Obviously, well, Kurt already spoiled it in the interview, obviously.
Of course,
but,
yeah. So, but
I know Eric had some issues with who the killer was, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I watched it the first time I watched it this week. I watched it in installments, and but by the time I got to the end, I couldn't identify who the killer was. So I had to email you, and so I didn't make a fool of myself on the podcast. Going, oh yeah, obviously the killer was Ramona.
Yeah, it was. It was the sheriff. He killed himself at the end. It was Coach Neil Marshall.
Well, I love. This is what I kind of love about. Is there any other slasher movie that has a killer having a naked shower scene? I wonder, because it's kind of complete role reversal, isn't it? You've actually got.
I can name one.
Oh, can you? What films?
Terrorize, aka Night School.
Oh, yeah, of
Well,
course, yeah.
And Ramona comes up, and Neil's having a shower, and she's trying to seduce him. And he's like, "Well, maybe I'm just not into cheap thrills, Ramona." And
But he likes walking around hacking people with machetes.
He's into cheap thrills. He's doing something.
But it's just
What about that scene where is it Susan Kyger, the waitress, or was it Jennifer Chase?
Well, they're both
where she
waitresses.
goes outside to. One of them goes outside to get a cat or something, or there's a cat outside, and when she walks back into the bar, the killer hits the screen with a machete. That's just such a weird scene to me because if
How
you
did
really
you
wanted
not
to kill her,
notice he was
you
standing
could've.
and following
Yeah.
her?
I thought it was the old lady, one of the old ladies at the fair, because they hit the
That would've been
machete with
good.
such a little kind of like. It's sort of like a real kind of like.
It was barely hit that screen.
It's like the killer had ME or something. It was kind of there was no. It's like saying if Jason or Michael or Freddy or someone had been there, they wouldn't have just let a screen door stop them. Killing. The other thing which I loved about, which I thought was so bizarre, such a bizarre choice. Is there was what I really liked in the film. The music was obviously really bombastic, but there was that kind of that. I don't know if you noticed that rumble throughout some of the scenes. That kind of early '80s electronica rumble that you get in quite a lot of slasher movies.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's kind of sort of like,
Yeah.
and it's towards the end, which I really like. But then they do this really bizarre kind of flip with the music. And then they have steel drums, like Jamaican steel drums, as they're walking towards the graveyard in North Carolina. And you're thinking, who on earth decided to have Jamaican steel drums during that scene? Why? What's the thought behind that? It just it was so bizarre. And one of the other things I wanted to say about the film, which hasn't been mentioned, has a little bit. I was going to say that Joseph's also done these interviews, but there's also a text version on Hysteria Lives. So if you want to head over there to read those, they were worth reading as well.
Yeah, those can be for the people who don't listen to our show. We know who you are.
We know who you are, yes. But the Owensby Studios, if I was saying the right thing, I think it's before this film, maybe it's after, but it shared quite a lot of the cast, was A Day of Judgment, which was the first and only, as far as I'm aware, Christian slasher movie set in the 1920s.
Right, and in the upcoming interview with Hans that we're going to play, he mentions a little bit about Day of Judgment.
Have you guys seen Day of Judgment?
Yeah. It's AKA Stormbringer. I think we got it as Justin, didn't we?
Yeah, that's right.
No offense to Hans or anyone involved, but I really thought it was kind of turgid, maybe. Would be a good word.
I think that's a kind way of putting it. It's not a good. It's certainly.
It's
not,
no House of Death.
It's no House of Death, and that's damning with Frank.
Yes,
I agree. It's no House of Death, but I still thought it was all right. I like the twist at the end.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, no, it was kind of good idea. It was just kind of it was just long stretches of nothing
I agree.
Going on.
It has dull parts in it. I agree.
Yeah. Are we going to talk a little bit about Susan Kyger and her notoriety?
I do have something I want to say. Not a lot of people know this, but Susan Kyger is the first Playboy Playmate to have done one hardcore pornography scene before she became a Playmate. And whereas some Playmates like Terry Weigel did hardcore after they were Playmates. So she's kind of famous for doing pornography before she was a Playmate. And
and this is her last film, isn't it? I don't think she did anything else.
I'm not sure. She did an oral sex scene in the early 70s, I believe, before she became a Playmate, and then she used her Playmate notoriety to land the House of Death role. So,
well, when I was looking,
that's from what I understand from research, anyway.
Yeah, because one of the things I was looking on IMDb, and obviously how whatever it's you to take a pinch of salt, but there was somebody saying that they'd written to one of the cast called Monica Boston. I think she played one of the teenagers, Sheila, which I've got no idea which character that was. But she said that David Nelson was very nice but quiet on set, and Susan Kyger was always worried her thighs were too fat. So there you go. It's kind of. She's
been eating a lot of chunky Kit Kats.
Well, she didn't go. When you saw her in the film, for a Playgirl, you would have thought she would have been the one. Being in Playboy, she would have been the one that would have got the wet brassiere like Ramona did, but. No, she didn't. So, but that was. It's very difficult to pick up anything on this film at all, apart from the other, which you mentioned in one of your interviews, Joseph, about the Playboy connection, because the film was originally titled. From what I saw in Variety, this is what it said, that it was originally titled Night Screams, and because Playboy had the title to Night Screams, what they were going to do with it, I don't know. They forced them to change it to Death Screams, which is probably a better title.
I spoke with Hans about that. He wasn't aware, but I think his response in the interview coming up was pretty sufficient information, I guess.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's kind of one of those kind of weird things when you look back through Variety archives, and it's the kind of weird things that they kind of throw up. So I've got this cat trying to break into the room as per usual. So hello, Gilbert. So, is there anything else we want to talk about House of Death before we get to the next interview?
Yeah,
I just wanted to say. Oh, sorry, Joseph. Go ahead.
You go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to say I always thought the scene was weird when Lily decides to tell her grandmother that she knows the truth about her dad's picture that her grandmother's been showing her, and she says, "What is it? The photo of my dad?" And the grandmother's like, "Yes." She goes, "I saw a whole store full of them in Savannah when I was 8." So I'm thinking she's carried this secret for 10 years, and she decides just one night, while her grandmother's sitting there knitting, just to finally tell her the truth. I don't know why, but that scene always seems kind of strange to me. Like an 8-year-old wouldn't question that.
Yeah, but it's always those kind of weird. It's almost like they're trying to throw doubt on who the killer was and what kind of motive. And actually, what was the killer's motive? His mother was a prostitute.
His mother, right?
His mother was a whore.
But why did he? Is he
so
just?
That kind of screwed
I think he thought all women were whores.
Oh,
yeah. That's why he wanted to kill them.
It was one of those ones, wasn't it? Sluts this, slut that, which is kind of one of the get out clauses for the early 80s slasher movie, isn't it?
He just had a thing against loose women, I guess.
Yeah. Which is kind of weird, isn't it? When you think, well, Ramona threw herself at him, and he had the perfect opportunity to kill her, and he didn't. So, but then you know, it's
You don't really think of things like that in in slasher films.
No, exactly. Then that's what part of the joy of them, isn't it? Is the fact is you can suspend disbelief and have a good time with them. You know, well, most of us can. So, but the other thing I was going to say, one of the things that I remember was that in the British DVD, the reels were mixed around, and already this film's pretty disjointed. But it's never had a decent DVD release, but it's been released loads of times. Maybe it's public domain, I don't know. But it got released with the reels round the wrong way. But apparently it was shown on American cable back in the 80s with the reels round the wrong way, with a lot of things cut out and some
on
additional
the
bits
Arts and Entertainment Channel.
It was it, yeah. And it's so maybe that's what was put out onto DVD in the UK. But apparently you've got scenes where people who've been killed are back in it and things like that, and it's just kind of, it obviously makes even less sense than it does at the moment.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Go ahead, Eric.
Sorry, I was just going to say on a tangent that ITV, which is one of the big commercial broadcasters in Britain, broadcast Perfect, the Jamie Lee Curtis and John Travolta film, with the reels all out of sequence. It made it even more tremendously brilliant, in my opinion.
Well, I was going to mention, I'm glad you brought that up, Justin, because, you know, A&E, the Arts and Entertainment Channel, they have these high-end biographies on actors and directors, and they have these, you know, high-class this and that. And for some bizarre reason, of all the movies they could choose to run, slasher movies, they chose House of Death. And I never understood that, and I never saw it on A&E, but certainly a lot of people have, because it's kind of common knowledge now, and I always thought that was really bizarre.
It's a weird thing, isn't it? I mean, you know, there's no rhyme or reason. I suppose it must have financial reasons, wasn't it? But,
it's like, I'm Peter Graves, and you're watching a biography on Elizabeth Taylor, and then coming up next, House of Death.
House of Death.
Can I also say, Justin, that I recently bought a box set, or it's not been too recent, but I bought a box set, and it said Death Screams on it, and I thought, oh, could that be House of Death? And I bought it and took it home and put it in the DVD player, and it, just like what you were saying, the reels were all mixed up. I mean, I was very pissed off when I paid money for that and got that crappy version. And also, they butchered every death scene. They showed no death scene at all. You know, it would just, I mean, it would just, characters would just disappear, basically.
It must be the TV version they must have put on there, mustn't it? Which is probably the one that ended up on the British DVD. What's the other thing I was going to say is, obviously, we can't go without mentioning the fat sheriff. Because what slasher movie, early 80s slasher movie, would be complete without a butterball fat sheriff huffing and puffing? And of course, the fantastic bit we haven't mentioned yet is the end where the sheriff runs up. He doesn't know anyone's dead, presumably. He runs up somehow. He goes to the house. I don't know. He knows he's going to get there. He huffs and he puffs and he goes there. The killer, in a pratfall, which is kind of like you know, like some of us do have or something, he kind of attacks someone with a machete, falls through a window, crashes down, ends up somehow in the basement. I'm not quite sure how that works actually, and then the sheriff opens the door and sees the killer, the coach, and for some reason shoots him dead. We know he's the killer. I don't know how the sheriff knew, but he shoots him and his head explodes in a really cheapo dime store scanners type of way. But then he proceeds, after his head explodes, shooting him 3 or 4 more times.
And again.
Yes.
I was hoping you were going to mention
I noticed that, yeah.
And you're thinking,
like, okay, he's dead. Obviously, you're wasting your bullets. I mean, how are you going to explain that to ballistics down at the station? I'm sorry, I wasted 4 bullets. Take it out of my paycheck.
That's kind of overkill, isn't it? That's overkill. And of course,
another thing I wanted to mention about the sheriff is when he finds Casey dead, he does this scream when the body falls. He's like, "Ah!" And I always thought that was hilarious.
No, it's brilliant. And of course, I think we said it would have been, you know, Susan Kyger was, I think as the people who interviewed, they said that, you know, she wasn't any great actress and she's a bit aloof on set, but Ramona, the woman who played Ramona, was lovely. But Ramona's demise, where she gets hacked in half while she falls through the stairs, by presumably with a kid with a machete, which is a pretty horrible way to go. And they pull her back out and she's been chopped in half. And I did wonder whether or not Michele Soavi, if that's how you pronounce it, the director of The Wonderful Stage Fright, the Italian late 80s slasher giallo mashup, had actually watched that film, because there's a great scene, a similar scene in that film, where a woman is chopped in half and her friends pull her back out and realise that she's been, essentially chopped in half.
I think that scene is done in Alien Resurrection as well, if memory serves me correctly.
Well, this is
they
House of
they
Death
just borrow
is...
the cast from the Ramona cast. They just use it in the same movie over.
Yes.
Well, see, House of Death was that's why it was on TV. People were seeing it and nicking bits from it. So it was, it was one of those films that really,
It's a trendsetter.
It's a trendsetter. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, I think we're kind of try and think of a few more things to say about House of Death, or we'll wrap things up.
You want to play that Hans interview?
Yeah, I was going to say, Joseph, do you want to introduce the next interview?
Yeah. Before I do that, I just want to give a shout out to my brother Scott. Now, when I recorded these interviews, my sound card is a little iffy. I'm kind of working on getting a new one. But what it did is Skype. It was Skype to phone. It created these really bad sync errors, and basically, after I recorded the interviews, I thought they were ruined because the sync was out of whack. There were dropouts everywhere, and my brother, who's a really, really experienced audio engineer, it's like, well, let me take a look at them, and within 5 minutes, he had them fixed, just like that. So, thank you for helping me out with that, Scott, and I know you're listening now. So there's your shout out.
Excellent.
And
excellent.
Anyway. You want to go ahead and play the Hans Manship interview?
Here we go.
All right, I'm here with Hans Manship from House of Death. He played Crazy Casey, in the film, and he's going to be answering a couple of questions for me today. So thanks for being here, Hans.
Well, hi, Joseph. I'm glad to be here.
All right, can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with House of Death and what year you remember shooting took place?
I think they shot it in 81 in the summertime. I was an actor living out here in the Hollywood area, the greater Los Angeles area, in the early 80s. And I heard of this project from some actor friends of mine who had gotten to know the writer named Paul Elliott. He's a great guy, turned out to become a good friend for many years. And then I learned from Paul that David Nelson from Ozzie and Harriet fame, he was set to direct it. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. David Nelson directing a horror film. So, and the third clincher was that it was going to be filmed on location at Earl Owensby's EO Studios in Shelby, North Carolina. This is kind of a self-made man, and he built sound stages and water tanks and several things there. They shot some of the underwater sequences for the movie Titanic in his studio, so it had some decent facilities. And I was born in North Carolina, and I still had family there. So I thought this would be great if I could go home to North Carolina and do a project. And so that's kind of how it all started. I knew they were casting many of the major roles in the Atlanta area, but a few from Los Angeles. It was a low-budget film. Joseph, this is something I learned early on in my career. Anything that I could do that would make me stand out among the hundreds of other actors, any way I could help, that usually made a difference. And a lot of roles I ended up playing was because I came up with something different. I got a role in a film one time because I had a certain uniform or could get access to it, and so they cast me in the role. So all kinds of fun stuff like that. But it was good to go to North Carolina and do the film. Now, I was originally in line to play the role of Diddle. That's who I thought I was going to play. But I later learned that Paul Elliott, the writer, had written in this role of Casey, the brain-damaged kid, with me in mind. And so that's the role I ended up playing. And I never played a role like that, and it had some challenges. I did some research, and I kind of enjoyed playing the role. It was good. So that's what I know about that.
I was doing some research, and it appears that I think you said the original shooting title was Night Screams. Is that correct?
Around the set, that's the title that was being used, Night Screams.
Now, I heard that, now I'm not sure if this is true or not, but I heard that Playboy had the rights to that title and forced the film to change to Death Screams or House of Death. Do you know anything about that?
Oh, I never heard anything like that. They certainly could have. In the little I know about things like that and titles, it's very hard to copyright a title. Thus, you see many songs and many books, many films with the same title sometimes. That doesn't mean that the Playboy organization, with all of their clout, could not have put pressure on this low-budget production, and they decided to change the name just to avoid, getting into some kind of battle with them. And the name really is, to me, not that significant. House of Death was, I think, what they ended up with. Death Screams was another title, and that always seemed more apropos. House of Death didn't really apply to the movie until, the very last part of the film. But that's what the guys ended up choosing.
Were you aware that the film was released in some markets with the reels mixed up? Like, for example, I believe in the UK it was released with sequences out of order.
Boy, I didn't know that, Joseph. That's real interesting. That would make it nuts to go try to figure it out. Here's what I do know about that. Some of the confusion, as I understand it, talking with my friend David Nelson, who I just learned recently died in January. I didn't know that. He was a good guy. He was not involved in the final editing of the film and putting it together, and he was disappointed in that. I'm not sure why that's the way it happened, but I do know the director was the creative mind behind the film and worked with the writer, and you're designing scenes to flow together, and in a low-budget film, there's not going to be a lot of extra time and money spent on shooting all kinds of sequences and then later figuring out what to use and what not to use. So when you take the director who put it together and shot it with a certain order in mind, you take him out of the equation, you've got all kinds of continuity problems and confusing cuts, things like that. So that may be why there were a lot of questions from a viewing audience. I think David Nelson's lack of involvement may have been a matter of budget restraints. I don't know, but we were really glad that it finally got into the theaters.
Do you remember any particular scenes that may have been cut from the film that you remember they shot but didn't show up in the movie?
I do not remember any film. The only parts that I remember that were shot that did not end up in the film were shots that were fun shots, the cast goofing off. Now, these were to be shown during the credits. You know how they'll roll some credits and then they'll show a little scene. Well, these are goofy shots of the cast, me not being brain damaged, me being funny, and some of the other guys being funny, even out of character, just to show some fun to the audience that we had making this slasher film, and those never ended up in the film, in the final cut. That's all I know that was shot. And like I said earlier, they didn't have a lot of money, and most low-budget films, to shoot a lot of extra things. They pretty much follow the script or what sequences they're going to shoot, and they may shoot a little padding here in case there's a problem and a few extra angles, but not a lot of extra shots in a low-budget film.
Right. Okay. Do you keep in touch with anyone from the film, or do you happen to know a couple of people who listen to the show, and one in particular who participates on the show? We've kind of been wondering whatever became of Jennifer Chase. She played Ramona, and Sheriff William T. Hicks. I'm sorry, tongue-tied. Who played Sheriff Avery? Do you know what happened to them?
You know, I've kind of lost touch over the years. I left that side of the industry, and I did a couple of films with Bill Hicks. He was a professional guy and a very likable guy. In House of Death, he played, and I think it comes through in the film during a scene that he actually is my father, and we did a film together called Day of Judgment. And he actually played a banker in that film, and I played, this is in the 1920s, I played an Amish Mennonite farmer, and the bad banker was taking away my land, and so we were in opposition to each other in that film. But, yeah, Bill Hicks was a good guy, very professional, and enjoyed working with him. Lost touch with him. I think he did several films with EO, and did a couple of other bigger budget films, but I haven't heard from him in years. Now, Jennifer was a sweetheart. She was down to earth, very likable, very real, very fun gal. I stayed in touch with her for a while after the film back here in Hollywood, because she came from Hollywood. She wasn't cast in Atlanta. And so we stayed a little bit, encouraged each other in the business, and met up for dinner a couple of times just as friends to, see what we were up to. But eventually I lost touch with her. But yeah, I thought a lot of Jennifer. She was a very beautiful woman.
Do you remember like any behind the scenes anecdotes or kind of juicy tidbits that you can recall happening when the cameras weren't rolling?
The thing that I enjoyed working with David Nelson, he was also kind of a reserved guy, but for some reason David liked me. He talked to me privately about how for some reason I reminded him of his good buddy Peter Lorre. Now I remember Peter Lorre. He's a little guy and he kind of talked like this. And he did a lot of horror films. Well, he worked with David Nelson in a movie called Big Circus, and Nelson played a flying trapeze artist. He was the catcher. And evidently David liked this so much that he kind of pulled out of show business for a while, a year or so, and he trained and was a professional catcher in a circus for a while. That's what he said. On the set, we noticed that he had his shoe off and was on it was his right foot, and he didn't really say anything. He just directed the scenes, and the day went on several hours, but we didn't know why his shoe was off. Something had fallen, a big cinder block had fallen on his foot. I think it was a cinder block, and had fractured the metatarsals and broken his foot. And he was in pain, but he didn't say a word. He just kept on going all day. And then later on, after shooting in the evening, went to the hospital, and they took care of it, and he finished the film without trouble. But I thought that was pretty admirable. He got the job done, and he gave it his all. So he was a good man. He created a very good atmosphere on the set, and that's important for a director to do. It made all of the actors feel comfortable and wanted to give their best performances for him. He was good to work with. So that's an anecdote I remember that impressed me from that director.
Oh, very cool, very cool. All right, well, I don't really want to take up too much more of your time, so I'm just going to say I really appreciate it, and I'm just going to kind of wrap up here and kind of give you maybe a chance to say maybe what you do these days or anything like that, if you'd like.
Yeah, I've been on the other side of the camera and the microphone for many years now, and I'm working in the administrative side of radio, and I'm presently with a Christian ministry, a radio program that works in third world countries, 30-some countries. We help the poor and the orphans, medical aid and such, some of the hardest hit people, and especially when there's a disaster. And it's really rewarding. I'm enjoying it and have for years. It's kind of feels good to be involved in something that's bigger than I am. So that's what I'm up to.
That's very admirable. But once again, I really do appreciate it, and it was really good talking to you and hearing some stories about the film. And when this is done and edited, we're editing on Sunday. If you'd like, I can send you a link and you can listen if you like.
That would be great. I'd love to. Well, it's been, I appreciate what you're doing. It's great. You know, I love movies, and I know a lot of movie fans out there. I'm one. And learning behind-the-scenes things from films, it's always fun, and it just makes it more enjoyable. This House of Death was a low-budget film, you know, had a lot of flaws in it, but it was nice to play a decent role, a good, challenging role in it, and I'm glad I did the film. Well, keep up the good work.
I'll certainly try, and thanks again.
Great, and that's Hans Manship, Joseph talking to yet another one of the survivors, well, real survivors of House of Death. So we're going to wrap things up in a minute. Sorry, Joseph.
I'm sorry. I just want to say give a thanks to Kurt and Hans for taking their time, and they're actually on my Facebook friends list now, and I'm going to send them the link to this, and I think they'll really enjoy that. And I really enjoyed talking to them, and they were both really, really kind.
They were excellent interviewees, I have to say.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Lots of. I mean, hopefully people will, enjoy those. I mean, I found them really interesting. I mean,
so did I. Yeah.
But I mean, as also just to whet people's appetite, we won't say yet who we've got lined up, but we have at least in the bag. We have one interview with probably one of the best known people from early 80s slash movies, and we've got a few more interviews with people lined up, which I think if you love early 80s slasher movies, and if you don't, why on earth are you listening to this? Then you are going to love these. So, I mean,
they think this is a lead-in for Eric's Dirty Dancing podcast, so they have to listen to it.
Yeah. It's called. You can find it at icarrythewatermelon.com.
Right. Well, we should look forward to that. So, is there anything else we want to say about the?
I was just doing some quick research on it to see what films, because this opened in May of 1982 in the States. I assume it got a theatrical release.
I actually have the film poster. I've got the original one sheet. The American one sheet under the title Death Screams, which has got a great painted face of a woman screaming. But yeah, there you go. That's which you'll see on the Hysteria Lives. It's under one of the interviews, either with Hans or Kurt. It's my poster. But sorry, Erik.
Sorry, I was just seeing what was happening that month in slasher movie history, and the only thing I could come up with was that it opened the same month as Visiting Hours, the Michael Ironside, Lee Grant movie. Yeah. But also, Justin, this will be of interest to you. Ooh. It opened the same month that Susie and the Banshees released the single Fireworks. Fantastic. Which made number 22 in the charts, and it would have made number 21 if it wasn't for a certain Toya Wilcox and her hit single Brave New World. So there.
Ha ha ha.
Well, there's nothing. I think. Well, Susan the Banshees had about 20 or 30 top. 40
blah 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 blah.
How many did Toya have? How many did Toya have? I wonder.
She had 40 billion, actually.
Did she? Well,
yeah. She had great hair.
She did have great hair.
Well, I actually, Erik, I've got a little surprise for you now, because I'm going to play for you a clip of Toya live from the Women's Institute in Cheltenham. No, I won't. But she did. She was on our local news at the Women's Institute. I don't think Susie would do that. She has some dignity.
She's too busy collecting the toll.
Just too busy collecting a royalty.
A little bit of everything for everything.
So anyway, I'm sure our listeners don't want to listen to us bickering about washed up old has-been and Susie.
That was me gasping.
Finally.
Finally, the gasp is back. Right, and finally, the last thing I want to say about House of Death was, which I thought was a real shame, is normally we play a trailer on the show. We couldn't find a trailer. I looked around. I found a bizarre trailer for House of Death, but it was some bizarre Russian vampire movie. But I was wondering, what would be really good, it'd be good fun to actually try and cut together a fan trailer for House of Death. So
I was going to do that, but I didn't really have the time. So maybe the next time.
Well, I can
do House of Death Part 2.
I couldn't be asked either, but maybe somebody would. Maybe one of our millions of listeners will do something and surprise us. So So guys, have we got anything else we'd like to say before we wrap it up? Because I think we're probably over the 2-hour mark here with the issues and everything.
I think we lost Nathan again.
Oh, no, you're there. You're there, Nathan.
There he is.
Yeah, so we've had a few sound issues.
I've been listening. I'm honing in on my listening skills.
Well, I was going to say that we've had a few sound issues because we've already said it in the past, but is that we're doing this on Skype, and Joseph and Nathan are in the States, I'm in the UK, and Erik's in some funny little island in the Atlantic somewhere. So it's we do have sound issues, but so we've had a few Skype dropouts, but I think it's all come together nicely. So
if you don't like it, lick our nuts.
Exactly.
The iPad saved me.
iPad saved you, yes. So, well, thanks for listening. And what we're going to do is we will play out with a little bit more of that fantastic music from House of Death.